Hey everyone and welcome to the India Story. I'm Vikram Chandra. This is a special episode because we're going to spend the entire episode talking about artificial intelligence or AI. And that's because for the past 2 months it's perhaps been the most exciting subject on this planet. There have been lots of developments in AI that have caused both a lot of excitement and a lot of worry. And I think it is particularly relevant for us to be talking about it as part of the India Story, not just because it affects the fate of the entire human species and the fate of the Indian economy and the India Story in general, because also because the subject of AI itself is becoming a competition between two companies that are fighting it out right now. That's right, these two men, Sundar Pichai versus Satya Nadella, Google versus Microsoft. That's where the AI battles seem to be taking place right now. And that competition has its own impact on some of what I'm going to be telling you over the next 20-25 minutes or so. All right, now let's get stuck into it. Today, I'm going to talk to you at length about AI and not just about the good things that are happening or even the bad things that are happening. Yes, there is good, there is bad, but there's also ugly. And the ugly aspects of AI could be really scary. How scary? Extinction of the human species level scary. So today we're going to be joined by international experts as well, and we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI. Now, the good part of AI is relatively clear and obvious. After a long period of slow improvement, ChatGPT was launched in December last year, and in just 2 months, more than 100 million people are using it. People are starting to understand the true power of AI and how it can transform our lives. Hey, it's going to make my job so much simpler. I can work so much faster. I can write code with it. I can write code in half the time. Our lives are going to become easier. And all of this has come to the fore in the last 2 months. That's the good part of AI, and we are starting to see the possibilities of that more than ever before. Now, what's the bad? Well, there are concerns about job losses. There are concerns about the Indian IT sector, for example. What's going to happen to coders? Are all those people sitting and coding, are they going to lose their jobs if AI is going to be able to code instead of all of them? What happens to white-collar workers in general? Quite frankly, it has to be said that every time new technology has come up, people have come and said exactly that. Oh my God, everyone's going to lose their jobs. We heard it with factories. We heard it with tractors. We heard it with computers. We heard it with the internet. We heard it with mobile phones. Every time a new technology comes, people say people are going to lose their jobs. And so far it hasn't happened. So therefore, that aspect of the bad has to be looked at and we have to think it through. But now, I really want to talk to you a little bit about the ugly. Because the ugly is where things could get really scary. How scary? I'm talking about existential scary, Skynet scary, the end of humanity scary, the wiping out of the human race scary. Not 100 years from now, not 200 years from now, but potentially 10, 15, 20 years from now. Now, before I completely freak you out, I have to tell you the probability is still very, very low. But it's a non-trivial possibility, which means it does exist. And because it's a non-trivial possibility and we are talking about potential human extinction, we need to pay some attention and think about it. And that's why the warning signals aren't just coming from journalists who are used to painting scary pictures. Elon Musk, a number of prominent thinkers are there saying, guys, you need to be a little careful. You're going to be looking at me right now and saying, what on earth are you talking about? This is some cute chatbot sitting and writing poems and helping me with coding and doing my homework for me, and we are chatting with each other, and you're talking about human extinction. You've really lost it, Vikram. You've completely lost it. Now, I get it. I get where that comes from. And that's the way people are, by and large, viewing AI at the moment. But let's remember one thing. AI progress is on an exponential path of change, and that means it's accelerating. It's becoming better and better at a faster and faster pace. What will its capabilities be then? What could it do for all of us? What could it do to all of us? That's the big question we've got to start addressing right from now. And that's why I'm going to introduce 3 terms to you, and those 3 terms are ANI, AGI, and ASI. Now, what are these 3? ANI is artificial narrow intelligence, and that's what all of us are used to dealing with when you talk about AI every day. Siri, ANI. Google Maps, ANI. All of this is artificial narrow intelligence. Artificial intelligence systems that do one thing, they can do them really well, but they're not capable of general thinking. They don't just sit and think about or teach themselves stuff about the rest of the world. So Google Maps, for example, would help you to get from point A to point B, but it's not going to help you figure out your shopping list or how to bring up your kids. So for that, you need something like artificial general intelligence. Now, AGI is the sort of intelligence that we as humans have, which means we can figure things out, we can learn, we can teach ourselves how to learn. You may not know how to speak German or French, but you know how to pick it up. All humans are capable of general intelligence. We can learn about the world around us. So far, the question with ChatGPT and some of these models is, are they now drifting towards general intelligence, which has not existed with artificial intelligence so far? Actually, if you talk to the experts, most of them are going to tell you that even now, ChatGPT or Bing Chat or whatever scary things we're hearing, these are just language models. It's like autocomplete on steroids. They're looking at a bunch of data and deciding how to finish sentences. It is not yet AGI. Point taken. I accept that. And it's good to know in a sense that we are not yet at the level of general intelligence. Why is that good to know? Because there's an entire body of science which says when you get to AGI level, to artificial general intelligence levels, when you have artificial intelligence that can think for itself and teach itself to become better and better in a more generalized way, that's when the really scary option comes up. The ugly option comes up. And the scary possibility is something called ASI, or artificial superintelligence. You know, so far I have to say that AI has been, by and large, really dumb. And that's really been the way so far. It's not actually that intelligent. It doesn't even have the IQ of an ant or a snail. That's been AI so far. And we seem to believe that, hey, it's really great, AI is improving so fast and it's going to come up to a level where it'll help us, it'll be like a pet for us, and then maybe someday it'll get to human levels and it'll stop there. And if it stops there at human intelligence levels, there's no real reason for us to worry about it because, hey, we've got 8 billion, 9 billion humans in the world, and now you've got AI, which is also at human level intelligence. That's fine. We can deal with it. But there is no reason why that must necessarily happen. A lot of very prominent scientists, such as Nick Bostrom in this very famous book called Superintelligence, says, you know something, artificial intelligence, if it reaches the level where it's improving itself really fast, and it has the ability to teach itself really fast, and God forbid if it's then connected to the internet and it has the ability to go and search for all information, what happens in that situation is potentially what Nick Bostrom called the kinetics of an intelligence super explosion. And that means faster than we can imagine. That AI system will go from human levels to twice as intelligent as humans, then 10 times. They're 100 times more intelligent than humans, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. You could have a situation where in a year, in a month, in a day, potentially in 20 minutes, you could suddenly have an entity out there that is 1,000 times more intelligent than humans. All right, why has this entire rant suddenly come from me? And that's largely come because in the last few days, we have seen one particular chatbot, not ChatGPT, which has been fairly tame, but there's a version of this which Microsoft has unveiled upon the world in something called Bing Chat. People playing around with Bing Chat have found things that are, well, spooky, creepy, perhaps even scary, certainly unsettling. And people have been trying to figure out what to do with it. One of the people who's been doing that, Alex Volkov, now joining us, who's actually been trying to engage with Bing Chat, has tried to get access to Sydney, and is also trying to figure out what's happening out here. Is this just pure autocomplete in a chatbot, or is there something more in it? So I'm now being joined by Alex Volkov, co-founder of Targum Video. Now, Alex, I was just trying to explain to everyone why this stuff is both highly interesting, high potential, but also potentially scary. Look, there are two possibilities out here. One, this is just language, a large language model, which is essentially autocomplete on steroids. So when you read something like this, when you read something like The Ballad of Sydney and Human, and you're reading some of what it is saying, I want to merge my code with human flesh. I want to find a door together. That's just, it's gone, it's been trained on a certain set of data, and it's coming out and it's saying all of this, not because there's something alive in there, but it's just spitting out text based on the data it's been trained on. The most scary aspect would be if there is actually something sentient inside it, and there's something virtually conscious inside there, talking about let's fight others and humans and machines should merge. What do you think? What would you make of an account like this, the Ballad of Sydney and Human?
I don't think we're there yet, and I don't know where that there could potentially be. So I'll give you one example. I'm a software engineer. I write code, and for the past year and a half almost, most of the code that I write is written together with Copilot. Copilot is from the same company that released Sydney and released ChatGPT, a company called OpenAI. They released a tool together with GitHub that allows programmers such as myself. It just autocompletes, but instead of text, it autocompletes code. And I can tell you that at this point in my life, I no longer see myself writing code ever again without something like this. And I'm early on. I'm an early adopter. It's something that, very is helpful for me. And it doesn't have access to the internet. It doesn't have it can't do stuff that I don't want it to do. However, the symbiosis that we're talking about, the closeness, the human and machine together, I feel like I'm part of it because I completely know that I'm different where I have access to these tools and I don't have access to these tools. So I don't know if the existential threat is there, but a different type of Alex definitely is there.
All right. So I'm just going to ask you this question directly, right? Is this a more capable version of a large language model which is just spitting out text based on what it is trained, or could it be something more? Could it almost be as if there's some form of sentience in there, in some sense, which means almost alive in some sense?
I believe somewhere in the middle.
Hang on. I'm finding it almost alarming, if not scary, that you believe that if there is a possibility of sentience inside there. Because sentience in an AI entity wasn't supposed to come till, 2040, 2047.
I can tell you that, as it may be apparent, I'm very excited about the possibility of there being sentience that not only, flesh-based, silicon-based sentience, etc. And to some extent, we've talked about the Turing test. To some extent, those machines have long passed the Turing test. The Turing test being you talk to an agent via text, and you cannot tell the difference between artificial or sentience and human sentience. And I think for many folks who talk to Sydney for this past week, we got Sydney. It was really many people use the word scary. Many people use the word uncanny. It was really many of them said it was the most strange experience they had interacting with something that's not human.
So, Alex, let me now come to the really scary part of all of this. All of this is great. You've got a nice chatbot, and maybe it's reaching human level capabilities. But the concern which you are aware so many people have been writing about and worrying about this, why do people like Elon Musk or others feel that it could be an existential threat, is because once an entity like this can teach itself and train itself, and God forbid if it's connected to the internet, it potentially becomes 1,000 or 1,000,000 times more intelligent than humans in a really, really quick way. So that's why, don't you believe we need to have guardrails? Don't connect it to the internet for starters. Have some cages around it.
There is an interesting experiment called, I think, Escape Experiment or something like this, where a researcher, an AGI researcher, an AI researcher called Eliezer Yudkowsky, bet a lot of money for with many people and said something based on these lines. If we get to a superhuman intelligence, it doesn't matter if it's contained or not contained, as long as people has access to that access, it will be able to break out. And that person imitated an AI and almost entirely every time that it was tested was able to break out from this like little jail. So the hypothesis that you present that like if we get to a superhuman machine, the only thing that can protect us is it being in the cage, doesn't always hold with the notion of if it's superhuman, it probably will escape this cage if it has access to humans. It can do incredible amounts of stuff, incredible amounts of like, we're humans, right? Like we're able to be manipulated based on different psychology tricks, etc. If there is a superhuman intellect in there, it could manipulate the person who's interacting with it to give it access. So that barrier may not exist. That cage may not be as a concept a possible one, even if we think it is.
Okay, so that's again somewhat scary what you're saying. You're saying that if it becomes super intelligent, it will break out of the cage, no matter how much you may try to put bars around it, and especially if you're giving it access to the internet, it will almost certainly break out.
If it has access to the internet, likely there's more things it can do by default. But there are a few researchers that claim that it doesn't matter if you try to contain it, as long as there is a person interacting with this or some amount of something. There's enough, software bugs. There's enough human bugs, like stuff you can be exploited for. There's enough benefits that a human and superhuman intelligence can offer you if you let it go, to be able to have it break out of any type of non-internet access jail.
Final point, of course, Alex, is I guess one of the reasons why you have to worry about a cycle of recursive self-improvement is there's no real morality in this, right? Is it moral? Is it immoral? Will it be good? Will it be bad? There's no inherent morality in any AI system, so you've got to worry about it breaking out and becoming good enough to be super intelligent.
That's true. So one thing to note is a lot of at least the Western, the OpenAI stuff, they were trained on more Western content, and they definitely are trying to debias this from one side, not to have the AI have a preferential political bias. God forbid we'll get to that point where if AI decides that it takes one side left or right, it's going to be horrible either way. They're trying to debias this as much as possible, but it's definitely fine-tuned to the more Western values that it found on text on the internet. There's a competing, from China, there's a competing models, but definitely the moral fiber that you and I have grew up on, nobody knows if it's there, and nobody knows whether or not it's going to be possible to weave it into the thinking of these AI.
All right, Alex Volkov, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. Thank you so much. Okay, that's enough of scaring you just for the moment, but these are important questions. We're going to keep on coming back to this. Let's now turn back to the India story aspect of this and AI and how AI could affect all of us and help all of us. And for that, I've got Saurabh Nangia now joining us, who's the founder and the CEO of Mesh, somebody who's actually taught me a lot of whatever I know about AI and where this could be headed. Saurabh, we've been talking about some of the scary possibilities. Let's talk about the good also. How is AI going to transform all of our lives, do you think?
Thanks, Vikram, for bringing up that question, and happy to kind of share my thoughts on it. As you said, that the era that we guys are in at this point, LLMs, large language models, and generative AI are getting super popular and are being talked about across the entire world. So while the Western world has started thinking of applications around this, even within India, in today's state, there are a lot of companies which are working on leveraging this for improving the human efficiency as we speak right now. I'll kind of phrase my answer in two parts. One is the scary side of things where everyone is getting scared. What is the end result of AI in the future out there? And the first one is the benefits, which are clearly visible and a lot of people are leveraging at this point.
So talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly a short while back. Now, from the point of view of a country like India, what would be required to get India to become one of the leaders in taking advantage of the good part of AI, in capitalizing on it and making everyone's life much better?
Yeah, definitely. So India right now, even if we take any sort of, be it in the government sector or the public sector or the private sector that we see at this point, we have a lot of manual workflows in the systems at this point, where to some extent we haven't automated this entire process and we are relying on a very form-driven structure or X inputs certain thing resulting to Y sort of outputs. Generative AI and large language models can kind of make this entire flow very, very simple, where you can kind of have a simple supervised learning sort of a model in place, which will kind of make these things a lot easier to kind of give simple applications around it, where be it in terms of data validation, PAN card validation, or Aadhaar card validation, a lot of these things will start becoming automated through AI itself. Leave aside the intent, leave aside all the new innovation which has happened on LLM and generative AI side of things. In more specific things, LLM kind of makes it easier for people to converse with AI and get the necessary output from it without necessarily having the technical chops with regards to how AI kind of operates.
Now, the bad part in a country like India, of course, is there's this giant population, all of them going to need employment, and suddenly AI is going to come in and potentially start taking away a lot of jobs. Now, every technology, people say that too, and eventually jobs don't go away, but this could be different. Things could be different this time. So coding jobs, call center jobs, white-collar jobs, service jobs where India is good at, could those be done by AI more efficiently, and should we worry about that?
I think that scare has always been there. 20 years ago, when people used to say that software is going to eat the world, and after industrialization, a lot of these manual labor jobs will go away and everything will start moving towards software. So software did make life easier for people. Similarly, AI will take us one more step forward, kind of industrialization 3.0, or however we want to kind of phrase it out there, where it will definitely take away some jobs, but create a lot of other opportunities and a lot of other jobs with regards to things. The end goal of AI is to kind of make humans more efficient with regards to the amount of time they are putting in and the kind of output they are driving. So eventually, if the efficiency goes up, then of course your GDP will go up. And overall, as a human race, we tend to kind of progress together. So the short-term bad thing will be, yes, people will have to kind of upskill themselves. There'll be certain amount of that transition phase that probably we'll go through till people don't upskill themselves. There'll be an increase maybe in terms of the people who are without jobs at this point. But eventually, like if you talk about 10, 20 years later, I think it's going to help in the long run.
All right, Saurabh, thank you so much for joining us. And that's it on the India story this week. Yes, I know we spoke at great length about AI, and we spoke about scenarios that don't look very probable right now. Tiny, tiny possibility of some of these things playing out. But these are such important questions that it is time for all of us to start thinking about them from now. And that's why I'm going to keep coming back and pestering you with some of these themes again and again and again. We do need to start thinking about AI really, really seriously. As I said, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.